Hi, I'm Kelly Cervantes, and this is Ceasing Life, a monthly podcast produced by Cure Epilepsy. This month, I'm excited to welcome a woman who has been a true trailblazer in the epilepsy field, Dr. Elinor Ben-Menachem. In her 40 plus years as an epileptologist, Dr. Ben-Menachem has worked closely with refractory epilepsy patients in both the United States and Sweden. During that time, she has also been a part of more than 100 clinical trials, including important studies involving vigabatrin and VNS devices. She has served on the American Epilepsy Society's board of directors and was the recipient of the 2022 AES Founders Award. Today, she continues to treat patients with refractory epilepsy at her practice in Sweden. Dr. Ben-Menachem, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so excited to share your wealth of information with our listeners. To begin, can you just give us a thumbnail history of your career in epilepsy and how you came to be practicing medicine as an American in Sweden?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I have to start with saying that I was born and raised in sunny California. When I graduated UCLA, I had the opportunity to study abroad for a year. And I went to Sweden because in Sweden you didn't have to speak the language of the country. And I ended up in Uppsala, Sweden, which is near Stockholm. It's a first university. And after several events that happened, I started to study medicine in Sweden, in Uppsala. So I graduated medical school in Sweden. I became a neurology specialist in Sweden. But during this time, I also took all of the exams that you need to be able to be qualified in America. And after my residency in Sweden, I did a postdoctoral fellow at UCLA and the VA, and I was able to get into the comprehensive epilepsy program. We're talking about 1982, about 81, 82. And that's how I got into epilepsy. I really was open to any type of area in neurology because every area is interesting once you delve into it. But this is where I learned how to treat epilepsy patients. We did clinical trials, and I started at the American Epilepsy Society in 1982. So I've been a member since then, gone to every single meeting, and I've been active in the American Epilepsy Society, been on the board of directors, been head of the Council on Education, and been head of the annual meeting of what we're having today here. And through my connection with the AES and also the International League Against Epilepsy, I've been able to have a very good clinical program and be able to help a lot of patients.
That's remarkable. And we are so grateful for your dedication to the epilepsy community over these last 4 decades. I can't help but think about, how our understanding and treatment of epilepsy has likely changed over that time. What strikes you the most as differing from when you were first starting out in the 80s to today?
Well, I think of the development of our knowledge of epilepsy and of all neurology. It's a continuum, and we stand on the shoulders of the great people who came before us. And by the time that we got to the 2000, the NINDS started this program, and it was a lot from the American Epilepsy Society, epilepsy benchmarks. And writing out what things do we have to know and to do research on to cure epilepsy. And so now we've had 5 different benchmark episodes: 2000, 2007, 13, 21, and now. So we have to keep updating what is our next goal, because we are with the help of the NIH, and then with all of the donations from Cure and AES and CDC, everybody is helping to go forward with these benchmarks to solve the puzzle of epilepsy. And we do have a better understanding of the causes of epilepsy. We understand this. It's not just epilepsy, it's all of the syndromes. And each one has a different profile. And we get to know the genetics. I mean, and genetics is so big now.
Yeah,
And
it has exploded within the last few years.
I think that genetics should be done almost at birth for every kid. I really think that with the knowledge of genetics today, if somehow this could be cheaper and we could do this, then we would be able to be proactive and be able to treat people before they get the damage that we see with all of these different syndromes.
Preventing something before it can rewire the brain is a cure in and of itself. I couldn't agree with you more.
You have to do that. At least we don't have the resources, the knowledge yet to, with genetic knowledge, be able to cure someone who's already damaged. And the brain is damaged by several years or years of horrible epilepsy.
Yeah. Now, to that end, your main focus throughout your career has been refractory epilepsy, this epilepsy that is, medically resistant. What is it that has attracted you to these extraordinarily challenging cases and patients?
Well, it was sort of exciting back at UCLA. My mentors, David Tryman and Antonio Delgado Escueda, they had patients with epilepsy, and they were very dedicated and still are to these patients. And I was taken in by them, and I sort of grew with them and understood the importance. And I also see that epilepsy is not these special cases. It could be me as well. So I have this empathy that I put in with my patients, and we work together as a team.
I love that you used the word team, because that was something a friend of mine who suffers from a different chronic illness, when my daughter was first diagnosed with epilepsy and we were, bringing on all of the clinicians, she was like, do you trust your team? Are they including you as a part of the team? And it was the first time that I had thought of myself as being a member of the team. I think in our modern medical system, we sort of look to doctors and we give them all of this power, and in some ways they're almost godlike, but in reality, we're all learning, and we do, the patient or the caregiver, we all have to be a team in this together. And so it just warms my heart to hear you say that. I wonder, how has, your approach changed throughout the years? It sounds like you had incredible mentors, but as new understanding and treatments of epilepsy have emerged.
There's so much happening. This is a different world in 2026 compared to 1982. We are doing better. There are still 30% of people who have, I mean, we don't really know, but there's about 30% who are still refractory or not totally healthy. But we're able to improve the lives of people who are refractory with making seizures shorter, less often, and the social aspects of the situation. That's what we forgot back in the 80s more. And this are the
Yes.
comorbidities, the depressions, the functional uh, problems, and all of these things have to be uh, addressed, especially stigma. So if you have a person who has a focal epilepsy and it is a child or whatever, they have a great stigma in school. They have seizures, kids will tease them. That's they develop a type of stigma in themselves that up with, and even the parents. But the parents and the other siblings may treat that child differently. So it can be a very tough family relationship as well. And then you have the institutionalized stigma, which I think that it's being addressed better than the ones down at the personal level.
Yeah, to that end, what advice do you offer patients or families that are living with a diagnosis of refractory epilepsy?
Well, I live in Sweden, so this is halfway it's a paradise compared to America, and halfway it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
So the socialized medicine that we have in Sweden, I don't get paid that much. We get paid like everyone else. You don't make huge amounts of money there. And I pay about 50% of taxes as well. But we have a system that if a patient needs a medication, they get it. And there's no big deal of saying to the insurance company or the hospital or, saying you can take it for 2 months, you can take it for your whole life. So this is a very big, relief. However, for a person with epilepsy to even get to a specialist, that can be a problem unless they're a child. A child always gets to go to the specialist. The doors open up there. But as a grown up, you go to the hospital, the epilepsy center, you maybe meet one person, and the next time you meet the next person, maybe they say come back in 6 months and you come back in 2 years. So the lines are very long as well. So it's a change of which do you like. On the other hand, if the patient gets in trouble, they can always call a nurse and then get to the doctor. I do differently than most of my colleagues. I see every patient myself, even in clinical trials. I keep my patients for like 30 years, 40 years. They don't change. They know who they come to.
Yeah.
And we're the team. But it's difficult to be a team like that in socialized medicine.
Interesting.
Hi, this is Tasia from Cure Epilepsy. Since 1998, Cure Epilepsy has raised over $100 million and funded more than 300 epilepsy research grants in 19 countries. Learn what you can do to support epilepsy research by going to cureepilepsy.org. Now back to Seizing Life.
Can you walk us through, Dr. Ben-Menachem, about your approach to working with patients with refractory epilepsy? I imagine that there might be some differences between, data collection in Sweden versus in America, but what does that process look like?
I don't think it is so different. I think that we're all very on the same page in Europe and in America. I'm very always surprised how everything's the same. And our workup with epilepsy, it depends a child or an adult. So we have equality of care wherever a patient lives. Don't forget, in Sweden, there's only 10 million people. This is a lot easier.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you live in the top, in the north, or the bottom, you still are supposed to get the same quality of care. And so the epilepsy evaluation always begins with a EEG. Now, advanced EEGs with video recording, those come later on if the patient becomes refractory. But regular EEG and MRI to detect anything, get any signal, and then the patient is started on if they are deemed to have epilepsy, they're started on a anti-seizure medication. And we've had guidelines, and this is a problem also in America, guidelines from 2018. So we're talking about 8 years ago.
Mm.
Come a lot of very exciting new ASMs that are better for the patient. They have less side effects, and their efficacy, like cenobamate, is astounding. I mean, the FDA just let them pass by these different phases of clinical trials, and cenobamate got to not do a phase three trial because it was so powerful. So we have better ones, and doctors, at least in Sweden and in America, are afraid to use these more modern medications that maybe might improve the lives, especially of new onset epilepsy.
Why do you think their doctors are not prescribing the newer medications?
Because number one of these guidelines, which also are in America, and so they feel they have to, if you're not a doctor who really works as an epileptologist in a tertiary clinic, then you sort of want to be on the safe side,
Right.
and you don't want to go into something that you don't really understand or you haven't heard so much. I don't think that drug company representatives are allowed to really contact a lot of neurologists. And even at the AES, we had problems. You can't really have symposium on these drugs in detail. But if you don't know how to treat your patient, how are you going to improve them?
Right. How do you know about the new treatments if no one is telling you about them?
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Well, now we have some industry symposia. So now we're allowed, they let the bars down a little bit. Now we're allowed at these conferences to have symposia in the evening from drug companies. And there's so many exciting new drugs, and I don't think we should be giving drugs like well, you go into the hospital, you get levetiracetam. So everybody starts on levetiracetam. At least it's not phenytoin or carbamazepine. So it's levetiracetam, easier to change and go forward. But then the patient, if they're lucky, they get to go to a neurologist. And I think actually that with new onset seizures, that's very important. You have to stop the seizures then,
Yeah.
or you get connectivities and the roads in the brain that you have to try to get rid of. It's better to get rid of them at the beginning. And so people are not that aggressive. And I think it's the same in America and in Sweden. I'm very aggressive. If I see a new patient, then we work very hard. They are not allowed to have more than one seizure after they come to me. We do the next one.
I love that so much. It is forbidden.
Well, because
That's
I really feel it's like almost a panic situation that we really should try.
yes.
Not just say come back in a year.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
This is what I get of 40 years of treating patients. That's basically my take home message.
Yeah. Now, switching gears a little bit, you have been involved in over 100 clinical trials, which is just incredible. How and when did you first get involved in conducting clinical trials?
That was at UCLA in 1982. I did my first trials, vigabatrin. So vigabatrin was sort of my first baby, and I went on and developed and did all of the pharmacokinetics and lumbar punctures and the mechanism of action of vigabatrin in the brain of humans, and that's what I got my PhD thesis on. And then, so when I went back to, we decided after a year that we needed to go back to Sweden. And so we went back there, and that's when I finished all of my vigabatrin work. And meanwhile, I had my wonderful colleagues in America like B.J. Wilder and Kiffin Penry and Richard Matson and David Tryman, and they knew what I could do. And I could work with basic science. So it was over the street and we were all friends. This was a different time. It was wonderful. I could get ideas and then we could work together to do amazing things then. So I was the first one to begin looking at vagal nerve stimulation. I did those beginning trials, and we did lumbar punctures, and we looked at the mechanism of action. We know that it causes neurogenesis in the brain, that it's good for Alzheimer's. Nobody ever has wanted to continue to take these discoveries forward, and it's like depressing. I showed how good vagal stimulation can be in patients with Alzheimer's. We looked at tau, we did lumbar punctures and all sorts of things, followed them for 2 years. It's all published. But, the economy of this, and it became a different world, and nobody wanted to put the money into these more interesting
Right.
topics.
Right.
And I took in topiramate was one of my first drugs. It was me and my colleague in medicine who found that it causes weight loss, and we did those first publications of that. And gabapentin, it was me who discovered and told the company about pain. That it wasn't so good for epilepsy. It wasn't so strong, but it sure helped against pain.
Now, what would you advise to patients and their families who are looking to participate in clinical trials?
Well, the most important thing, if you have bad epilepsy, is that you can be proud of yourself if you help others as well and join a clinical trial. We have trouble finding patients. We have wonderful new medications, but they have to be tested in a proper way. You just can't write, I think that this is good for you. You have to do those double blind studies.
Mm-hmm.
And patients who maybe can't get expensive medications at this time, if they're in a clinical trial, number one, they get fantastic care. They get a total workup of everything that of their body in a clinical trial, and they have people who are very invested in their care. And for 3 4 years, they can be in these clinical trials, and they can get a new medication, like the people that were in the clinical trials of cenobamate or Epidiolex or fenfluramine. They were already able to be treated 5 6 years before these things even appeared on the market. So it's your chance to get in on the deal and get new therapies, new treatments, and be taken care of, and it doesn't cost anything.
No, that's remarkable advice. Dr. Ben-Menachem, you have been working with patients for decades now. What have you found to be the most important aspects of care in terms of improving the quality of life for patients? I'm thinking, yes, in terms of treatment, but also in terms of support and lifestyle.
Yeah, this is this ends up to be the most important thing is lifestyle support. Do you have a supportive family? Are you all alone? Are you poor? Uh, how can you get the proper help that you need? And I mean, there are wonderful things in America like Cure and being a member of Cure or Epilepsy Foundation of America. I mean, these are wonderful things to help the patient and the whole person. You have to look at a person holistically and what can you do to help this person go forward in school or as an adult in change. Sometimes just changing the job can help, because if you have a night shift, this is just simply terrible for someone with epilepsy. And they can have a whole different situation if they can try to find a new job. This is easier said than done. And some people are stuck in bad jobs. Alcohol is a big problem. I think that what is neglected a lot is exercise and music. Exercise. You had a webinar on music too, which was great. But if you have, if you have epilepsy, there is a publication in the International League Against Epilepsy about what types of activities you can do. And especially if you're a child, there's a wonderful opportunity to actually excel in sports. And there's something called the Paralympics that everybody seems to forget. That there is this fantastic organization, Paralympics, who really want to help with children and bring children with handicaps forward. It's a stigma. It's really fantastic.
Now, as we speak, you are currently attending the American Epilepsy Society conference, which this year is in Atlanta. I know the conference is just beginning. But what is some of the promising research that you are excited to be learning about at the conference?
Well, the big emphasis is on genetics and immunology, and how inflammation can affect the development of epilepsy, and can we use therapies that are anti-inflammatory to reduce epilepsy. It's very interesting. Then there is this presentation on the National Plan for Epilepsies, which is starting in America. In Europe or in the world, we have this international global plan, action plan for epilepsies. And the WHO is very active on this and reaching out to Africa and even in Europe to help patients. But now you are starting a national plan, and Cure is part of it. And this is so important because then you will have the social structure to be able to show your patients to go here and there. And that's going to be a whole new world. It's very interesting. So there's so many things to attend. I want to see in a scientific workshop how they can now image neurotransmitters and amino acids to image. I mean, I had to do lumbar punctures and measure them chemically, but I think that for me is something very interesting. I'm always interested in mechanisms of action.
It sounds like you are going to be very, very busy over the next few days. And I know I personally can't wait to see all of the exciting presentations that come out of this year's conference. I am fascinated by inflammation and its role in epilepsy and the different ways that we can treat it. That piece in particular is super intriguing to me. Dr. Ben-Menachem, thank you so much for taking time to speak with us and share your knowledge and experiences with us. It really means so much to me and our community.
All right. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ben-Menachem, for taking time to speak with us during your trip to the 2025 AES conference. And thank you for your 40 plus years of dedication to the epilepsy community. Cure Epilepsy has been a part of the epilepsy community for more than 25 years. From its start in 1998, Cure Epilepsy has been focused on funding epilepsy research aimed at finding a cure. As the largest non-governmental funder for epilepsy research, Cure Epilepsy has raised more than $100 million to fund research and other initiatives that will lead the way to a cure. If you would like to support our efforts, please visit cureepilepsy.org/donate. Thank you.
The opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of Cure Epilepsy. The information contained herein is provided for general information only and does not offer medical advice or recommendations. Individuals should not rely on this information as a substitute for consultations with qualified healthcare professionals who are familiar with individual medical conditions and needs. Cure Epilepsy strongly recommends that care and treatment decisions related to epilepsy and any other medical conditions be made in consultation with a patient's physician or other qualified healthcare professionals who are familiar with the individual's specific health situation.